Hello friends, imagine for a second that you are living in a country where the military forces of the central government enter a city, shoot a citizen in the face, and the local mayor responds by publicly telling the federal army to get the F out. Imagine a situation where the Secretary of Homeland Security goes on national television and calls an incident an act of domestic terrorism, only for the governor of that state to immediately hold a press conference and tell the public, "Do not believe this propaganda machine." This sounds like a script from a dystopian movie or a report from a failing state in the midst of a civil conflict. But this is not fiction. This is the reality on the streets of Minneapolis, Minnesota right now as of January 7th, 2026. We are witnessing a breakdown in the chain of command between the United States federal government and the state of Minnesota that is unprecedented in modern history. A 37-year-old woman is dead. The White House says she was a terrorist. The video evidence suggests she was a victim, but there is a much darker political game being played in the background, a game involving a massive federal occupation, allegations of welfare fraud, and a political scandal that has reportedly forced a sitting governor to end his career. What is the connection between this shooting and the sudden fall of Minnesota's political leadership? I will tell you about this massive political shift later in this video because it changes everything about why these federal agents are actually there. Let's deep dive into the Minneapolis Civil War. To understand the magnitude of this crisis, we first have to look at the event that triggered this explosion on Wednesday morning, January 7th, 2026. At approximately 9:40 a.m. in the residential neighborhood of South Minneapolis, near East 34th Street and Portland Avenue, the streets turned into a war zone. The Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, launched what they are calling the largest immigration operation ever in the history of Minnesota. We are talking about a surge of over 2,000 federal agents flooding the Twin Cities. During this operation, an agent from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, shot and killed a woman inside her vehicle. Now, this is where the story splits into two completely different realities. On one side, you have the federal narrative coming from Washington, D.C. The U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, wasted no time in labeling this incident. She stated that agents were conducting a targeted operation when rioters began blocking them. She claimed that the woman weaponized her vehicle and attempted to run over law enforcement officers to kill them. Secretary Noem was explicit. She called this an act of domestic terrorism. According to the DHS, the agent fired defensive shots to save his life and the lives of his colleagues. If you only listen to the federal government, this was a justified takedown of a violent terrorist. But if you look at the evidence on the ground, the story collapses. Local witnesses and video footage obtained by news outlets paint a diametrically opposite picture. Witnesses report that the woman, driving a Honda Pilot, was boxed in by federal agents. When agents tried to open her door, she put the vehicle in reverse and then into drive, attempting to flee, not to attack. Video footage corroborates this, showing the vehicle reversing and driving away from the agents when the shots were fired. One witness described the agent reaching across the hood of the car and shooting the woman in the face 3 or 4 times. This discrepancy has caused an absolute diplomatic rupture between the city of Minneapolis and the Trump administration. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey did not use diplomatic language. After viewing the footage, he called the federal narrative of self-defense bullshit. He explicitly stated the narrative that this was just done in self-defense is a garbage narrative. But then, Mayor Frey took a step that defines the severity of this crisis. He publicly demanded that the federal forces leave his territory. He said, quote, "To ICE, get the F out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here." This is the definition of a constitutional crisis. You have a local executive ordering federal law enforcement to leave because they are viewed as a threat to public safety. Mayor Frey accused the federal government of causing chaos and distrust and stated that they are quite literally killing people. However, the conflict goes even higher up the chain. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the highest official in the state, publicly undermined the Department of Homeland Security. It's extremely rare for a governor to call the federal government a liar during an active crisis. Yet, Governor Walz told the public, "Don't believe this propaganda machine." So the question arises, why is this happening? Why are 2,000 federal agents occupying Minneapolis in the middle of winter? We have to look at the geopolitical context of this operation. This is not standard policing. This is a surge operation. The DHS has deployed these forces ostensibly to crack down on welfare fraud allegedly involving the Somali community in Minnesota. This comes just days after a conservative content creator posted a viral video alleging that Somali-run daycares were defrauding taxpayers. The political rhetoric here is incredibly charged. President Donald Trump has been openly hostile towards the Somali population in Minnesota. He has specifically targeted Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar, calling her garbage and stating that Somalis should return to where they came from. This context is incredibly vital because it explains the aggression on the ground. We are seeing reports of federal agents using chemical irritants and tear gas on protesters who gathered at the scene. We have the U.S. Border Control Commander Gregory Bovino, who is known for controversial operations in cities like New Orleans and Los Angeles, personally arriving on the scene in Minneapolis. This signals that the federal government is not looking to de-escalate, they are looking to dominate the space. But here is the tragedy of this operation. The victim of this shooting appears to have been a bystander to this political theater. According to U.S. Senator Tina Smith, the woman who was killed was a U.S. citizen. Representative Ilhan Omar has identified her as a legal observer, someone who volunteers to watch police interactions to ensure civil rights are upheld. The Minneapolis police chief, Brian O'Hara, confirmed there is nothing to indicate this woman was the target of any investigation. So you have a massive federal force deployed for political reasons to target a specific immigrant community that has ended up killing a U.S. citizen who was simply observing them. This validates the fears of local leaders like Chief O'Hara, who said just yesterday that he had been concerned for weeks that this federal surge would lead to a tragedy. Now, I promised to tell you about the massive political development that is happening in the background, the deep game that might explain the timing of all of this. While the streets are filled with tear gas, a major political shift has occurred in the governor's mansion. Reports emerging today indicate that Governor Walz has bowed out of the governor election bid in the wake of the welfare scandal headlines. This is a critical piece of the puzzle. The federal operation isn't just about arrests. It is creating a political environment that is toppling state leadership. Sources indicate that President Trump is pushing a false conspiracy linking Governor Walz to the Hortman killings. By flooding the state with agents and linking the local administration to welfare fraud and chaos, the federal pressure seems to have achieved a major political objective, the removal of opposition leadership from the upcoming election. So where do we stand tonight? We have a fractured system. The Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan, has called today's shooting an unspeakable act of violence committed by Trump and his thugs. You have the local sheriff, Dewana Witt, explicitly stating her deputies were not involved and are only there to assist as needed, effectively distancing local law enforcement from the feds. This is what a civil war of bureaucracy looks like. It is not fought with armies on a battlefield, but with jurisdiction, press conferences, and unfortunately, bullets on a residential street. The mayor says get out, the federal government says we are staying to fight terrorism. When a state government stops recognizing the legitimacy of federal law enforcement narratives, labeling them propaganda, and when federal agents kill citizens that the local police say were innocent, the bond of the union is tested. We will have to watch closely to see if the FBI investigation remains neutral, or if this becomes another battleground between Washington and Minnesota. But for now, the message from Minneapolis to the White House is clear. You are not welcome here. I will keep tracking this story as the video evidence is fully released. Thank you for watching.